I opened up my relationship, ended up losing my partner, and now I'm struggling to get him back. Is there still time? I'm reaching out for advice on how to preserve what's left of my union. To start, I've been with my husband for 7 years total, with 5 of those as a married couple. For anonymity, let's refer to us as Riley and Ethan. We met during our 2nd year at a local community college. Ethan later earned a bachelor's in business management through an online university program, while I got an associate's in administrative support. Right now, Ethan is 27 and I'm 26, and we had plans to start trying for a baby sometime this year. Our dream was to have 4 kids, preferably an even split of boys and girls. Our families adored us both, and our marriage felt truly blissful. That's when I made a huge mistake. I developed a close bond with a courier from one of the big shipping firms. Some might call it a work-spouse dynamic. For privacy, I'll name him Caleb. Caleb, 25 and single, has been dropping off packages at my workplace for roughly 2 years. We connected instantly without a doubt. It wasn't romantic at first, but there was an undeniable chemistry that drew me in. Each delivery led to at least a 10-minute chat. I began anticipating his visits and made a point to be upfront with him every time he arrived. One day, our discussion took a deeper turn. Caleb mentioned he had a personal question for me. He emphasized he didn't want to upset me or risk our professional rapport because it was so intimate. I urged him to go ahead and assured him it was fine. At that moment, he confessed he felt a powerful pull toward me and wondered if I sensed it too. His boldness caught me off guard and made me blush. After reflecting, I admitted that yes, I did feel it. Caleb went on to say that if I weren't married, he'd have invited me out. I appreciated the flattery, and the talk wrapped up there. That was it for him. Over the next week, our interactions became stiff and brief. I felt so guilty, believing I'd crossed a line. Even as Ethan and I carried on with our joyful home life, the remorse lingered. To clarify, I've always been completely content with Ethan as a spouse, companion, and intimate partner. I believed he felt the same about me back then. He was perfect in my eyes. Yet, foolishly, I began fantasizing about keeping my loyal husband while exploring something more than professional talks with Caleb. I later learned this is often termed having your cake and eating it too. Curious, I started researching open relationships and polyamory. At first, the idea seemed gross and absurd. I was convinced Ethan wouldn't agree, and even if he did, I didn't want to risk damaging our bond or alienating our families. Weeks passed, and my married existence remained wonderful. But thoughts of Caleb persisted. When I revisited the topic, I stumbled upon a blog post by a woman in an open marriage titled, "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask." She described loving her husband but pursuing a connection with a guy she met through volunteering. After bottling up her feelings for 2 years, she broached it during a long car ride. To her surprise, he was open to it. For years on, they reportedly had a deeper, more joyful partnership after opening things up and taking other partners. Her story resonated deeply because it mirrored what I craved but was too afraid to propose to Ethan. Then, one lazy Sunday morning at home, chatting and scrolling on our phones, I decided to raise the subject. "I just came across this article online about open marriages," I said outright to Ethan. "What do you think of them?" He looked over and asked, "You mean couples being intimate with others?" I confirmed and pressed for his opinion again. Ethan replied that he found it disgusting and that if people wanted that, they should just divorce. Trying to lighten it, I mentioned it's gaining popularity in the US and other Western nations, but his face showed clear revulsion, so I swiftly shifted topics. His reaction convinced me never to mention it again, as I didn't want to jeopardize our amazing marriage. A couple of weeks later, Ethan and I were cuddling in bed after an incredible night together. Out of nowhere, he said, "Who were you thinking of when you mentioned open marriages last time?" As I rested on his chest, unable to see his expression, I froze. I slowly lifted my head to face him, a knot forming in my gut. "What do you mean?" I stammered. Ethan explained he'd read articles suggesting that when a woman brings up open relationships to her partner, it often means she's already been unfaithful or has someone specific in mind. His words stunned me. In fact, they shook me to my core. Ethan added, "I know you too well. I can sense you're keeping something back. Just be truthful." I could have ended it there, but instead, I paused, looked away, and eventually confessed. "I've never been unfaithful to you and never would. But," I admitted, "there is someone from work I might consider if we ever explored an open marriage." Ethan pressed, "Tell me about this colleague." Reluctantly, I began describing Caleb and our interactions, including the time he expressed his feelings for me. I didn't admit, however, that I reciprocated. What Ethan said next terrified me. You know, in a way, you've already betrayed me. Defensively, I shot back, I haven't betrayed you. Ethan countered, your connection with this Caleb is called an emotional affair. I'd never heard the term, so Ethan explained it to me. I listened in irritation as he detailed how emotional affairs operate. Finally, Ethan suggested we drop the discussion because he had an early morning and needed sleep. He fell asleep, but I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and researched emotional affairs. Article after article confirmed what Ethan claimed. My bond with Caleb wasn't just emotional. It was a full-blown one. Guilt overwhelmed me. I felt like I'd failed my husband. Unable to sleep, I went downstairs for tea and eventually nodded off on the couch around 4 a.m. At 6:45 a.m., Ethan woke me with a kiss. I'm off to work. He said that I kissed him back as usual and said I loved him. But this time, with heavy guilt, I emphasized it more. You should get up. It's nearly 7. A few days later, after intimacy, we were lying in bed when Ethan suddenly said, if you really want to, I'd be open to trying an open marriage. Shocked, I asked, why bring this up now? He explained he'd been pondering our previous talks and figured if it was something we desired, we should experiment while young. I expressed cautious interest but vowed never to risk our marriage or our love. You're the most important person to me, I told him. Ethan replied, if our connection is solid, it can handle outside involvements. When I said a mutual open setup wouldn't count as cheating since we'd agree, Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he said, consider our marriage open from this moment. Taken aback again, I urged him to slow down and establish boundaries. He outlined these. We must inform each other in advance about who we'd be with and when. Afterward, we'd share about the encounter without explicit details. Protection was mandatory for all intimacy, no exceptions. I agreed to his terms and proposed a couple more. We'd keep our open status private. We'd commit to staying together and not letting these external liaisons destroy our marriage. Ethan refused both. When I asked why, he simply said he didn't and wouldn't agree, refusing to elaborate. This seemed entirely unlike Ethan, making me uneasy. Despite my discomfort, I cuddled up to him and we slept. Over the next month, I grew uneasy about the open relationship idea, suspecting Ethan had ulterior motives. I decided not to pursue it and focused on normal life. During this period, I avoided deep talks with Caleb at work, keeping exchanges to superficial topics like weather or workloads. Then one day, Caleb asked if everything was okay, saying he really missed our conversations. I told him I was swamped with work and home duties, so no time for chats. I debated whether to tell him about the open marriage. Eventually, I chose to reveal it and how I wish I could undo that choice. I invited Caleb for a drink after work, as it didn't feel right discussing it there. He agreed that we met at a local bar with an outdoor patio, perfect for the mild early spring weather. After explaining my newly open marriage, I asked if he'd be interested in pursuing something. He said yes without hesitation. Caleb admitted he'd been hoping I'd reconsider and had been fantasizing about me for months, but he respected my limits. We flirted through most of the evening. We arranged our first intimate date at his place the next day. I specified I had to leave by 6:30 p.m. to return home to Ethan, who remained my priority. That night, I got home and prepared a nice dinner for Ethan. After eating, I told him about my talk and drink with Caleb that day and our plan to meet at his apartment tomorrow, assuming he was still fine with the open arrangement. Ethan seemed surprised but replied, "Oh yeah, okay, so tomorrow then?" I reassured him we could cancel if he wanted, as he and our relationship were my main focus. "No," he said firmly. "Let's proceed." His hug felt stiff and distant, unlike our usual warmth. I attributed it to anxiety. We didn't talk much that evening. I worked on my tasks, and Ethan was in his office. Before bed, I tried initiating closeness, but he said he was too tired and needed rest. The next morning, I woke to find Ethan already gone, with a text saying he'd forgotten an early meeting and would see me that evening. This wasn't typical for him, but I dismissed it and proceeded with my day, getting ready and heading to work. I chose a particularly nice outfit that day, knowing I'd see Caleb after. I texted Ethan throughout the day, but no replies. That I considered canceling with Caleb but regret not doing so now. At 4:17 p.m., Ethan texted back, saying he'd see me tonight and that he loved me. Relieved, I took it as his green light to go ahead. To cut to the chase. My first intimate time with Caleb was intense. There was no love, and it wasn't as fulfilling as with Ethan. But the forbidden aspect and raw desire made it physically gratifying. I left Caleb's place after about an hour and a half, arriving home just after 6:40 p.m. To my surprise, Ethan wasn't there yet. I was glad, as it gave me time to shower and launder my clothes to remove Caleb's cologne scent. Physically satisfied, but flooded with regret, guilt, and shame. I felt tainted, like I'd broken every core vow in my marriage. Mentally, it was a battle, leaving me deeply anxious. Determined to make amends with Ethan, I prepared a simple yet elegant dinner with candles for romance. I wanted him to know I loved him deeply and that the physical encounter with Caleb meant nothing compared to our emotional and loving bond. I hoped we'd connect intimately that night. Around 7:30 p.m., Ethan still wasn't home. My calls went to voicemail. I texted about dinner being ready by 8:50 p.m. With no response, I worried. I kept calling and texting, leaving messages, but nothing. Finally, around 9:30 p.m., Ethan texted, "Don't wait up. I'll be home late." I texted back asking where he was and with whom, but no reply. Exhausted emotionally and physically, I fell asleep after midnight. I woke to the sound of the shower in the guest bath. Checking, the door was locked, totally unlike Ethan. He didn't respond to my knock. After 10 minutes, he emerged in a towel and casually said, "Hey, how was your evening?" I said it was fine. Then he bluntly asked, "Did you sleep with Caleb?" I cringed at the phrasing and asked him to rephrase. Reluctantly, I confirmed, "Yes, Caleb and I were intimate." Then I asked where he'd been. Ethan admitted he'd gone dancing and hit several bars. Suspicious from the perfume on his clothes, I pressed, "Who was she?" He said he didn't need to name her since they hadn't been intimate. Shocked by his revelation, I was more hurt by his tone and words. Ethan, who never swore at me, used harsh language that alarmed me. I then asked why he'd showered in the guest bath. Coldly, he said until I got 2 STD tests, he'd used the guest bath and bedroom. His words crushed me. That wasn't in our rules. I protested. I assured him Caleb used protection throughout. Ever heard of oral HPV or herpes? Ethan snapped. Until you're clear, I won't get within 6 feet of you. Call it my version of social distancing. Distraught and crying, I said I wanted to close the marriage immediately. This is the opposite of what I wanted. I sobbed. No, Ethan retorted. You've had your fun. Now it's my turn. Though I cried harder, Ethan just said he needed sleep for an early meeting and went to bed. I cried on the couch most of the night before sleeping. When I woke, Ethan was gone. I tried calling during the day, but no answer. He texted, "Don't wait up." I left voicemails and texts, but silence. I felt like I was losing my mind, knowing I'd likely destroyed my marriage. I had no deliveries that day, so no Caleb at work. But at 4:30 p.m., I called him and asked if we could meet that evening. He noted I sounded upset. When we met, I told him I wanted to end things, admitting it was a massive error. I confessed I loved my husband and only wanted him. He understood but asked for one last time together. Beyond that, he'd only interact professionally at work. I agreed, and our quick, lackluster encounter lasted under 10 minutes in a simple position. Afterward, Caleb said to me, "That was terrible." I apologized, saying the whole affair was a huge mistake, not his fault. "You just lay there like a log." I dressed, gave him a final hug, and headed out. Before leaving, I asked what he meant by, "I'll never understand women like you." But he muttered, "Nothing, forget it." With a face full of contempt, I drove home crying. How could I be so stupid? I'd wrecked my marriage for nothing. I felt dirty again, like the biggest idiot alive. Ethan got home at 1 a.m. that night. I was weary, realizing I'd single-handedly ruined my life. On Friday, Ethan did the same. Left before I woke, texted, "Don't wait up." The distance and coldness shattered me. I missed our shared mornings, evenings, weekends, cooking, post-dinner strolls, random chats. It was all gone, and I ached for it. I texted Ethan asking to talk the next morning. He replied, "Okay, as long as it's early." I asked where he was, But no response. He came home at 1:30 a.m. Without a word, he showered in the guest bath and went to bed. I just lay there sobbing silently. The next morning, I rose early to wait. At 7 a.m., he came to the kitchen, poured orange juice, sat at the table scrolling his phone. The air was dead and frosty that I approached, sat on his lap, and whispered, "Look at me." He averted his gaze, but I gently turned his face to meet his brown eyes. "I love you forever," I said. "I'm so sorry for the bad choice I made. Not a slip, but a decision. I'll do anything to regain your love and trust." Ethan stared silently, as if I were insane. Crying, I asked, "Do you still love me?" He replied, "I'm not sure." I begged, "I can fix this." He said, "I doubt it." In desperation, I accused, "You planned all this. You set me up for a divorce, didn't you?" Ethan denied it but admitted that from what he'd read, he knew our marriage was likely over the instant I mentioned opening it. "Why didn't you just tell me to cut off Caleb?" I asked, heartbroken. "You can't force fidelity," he said. "You're either committed to monogamy or not, and clearly you're not." Despite my pleas not to end our marriage, he stood and said he was leaving. When I asked where, he said he'd be back after midnight. "Tomorrow's Easter Sunday," I reminded him. "We're supposed to leave at 7 a.m. for my parents. They love you. We always spend holidays there." "I'm not going," Ethan said coldly. Shocked, I begged him to come, asking what I'd tell my parents. "Tell them the truth," he shrugged. Despite my repeated begs, he grabbed a gym bag and left without another word. I felt utterly defeated and broken. I'd love any advice or suggestions on steps to save my marriage, especially from those who've experienced open relationships. Can couples recover from such a breach? Have you reconciled successfully after opening up? Thanks for reading my story. I'm heading to bed now to cry the day away. First update. // I want to thank everyone who commented with support and encouragement. IT helped me endure these last few days. Many rightly scolded me and used harsh words, but I deserve it, and I appreciate your views too. Easter Sunday and today have been two of the hardest days ever. Arriving at my parents', they immediately asked, "Where's Ethan?" I fibbed, saying work emergency kept him. I didn't want to spoil the family gathering. They bought it initially, but as the day progressed, they noticed I wasn't calling or texting him like usual. TOE's suspicions. I sent fake texts and pretended to get replies from Ethan, saying he was tied up at work and would call tomorrow. Truthfully, he never reached out, not even to check if I arrived safely. That devastated me. Monday, I'd planned to stay over and confide in my parents about our issues. I feared their anger and hatred toward me. When I told them this morning, it went as feared. They yelled, called me awful names, said this wasn't how they raised me. My sister came over and joined in berating me. Crying, I admitted I'd done something terrible. I assured them I'd learned and would never repeat it. I said my sole focus now is reclaiming Ethan's love and trust. Eventually, despite their fury, they said they love me and will pray for our marriage's salvation. I drove home Monday evening. I called and texted Ethan all day, no response. Home. A note on the counter said he'd gone to Florida to visit his parents. Back Sunday, we'd planned to go together in early May, so I felt awful. Now that's ruined because of me. I hate myself. That's all for now. I'm just so sad and down. The scariest part is I'm not crying anymore. The pain and regret runs so deep that tears feel pointless. Second update. I hadn't planned to post for nearly a year, but given the community's interest, I'll share an update. I have bad news and good news. The bad news first. I'm divorced. It finalized in December. Ethan decided he couldn't remain married after I pursued another man. He said he felt embarrassed to be seen with me publicly and could never trust me again. He mentioned reclaiming his manhood post-divorce. I disagree. He never lost it, and only our families know about my short fling with Caleb. Anyway, the good news, no, fantastic news, is that Ethan and I started dating again last month. Since reconnecting on Valentine's Day, it's been wonderful. Our chemistry is off the charts, way higher than our initial dating 7 years ago, but we only meet on his terms about once weekly. Ethan made it clear this is purely physical. We'll never reunite as a couple, remarry, or cohabitate. I'm not thrilled with that, but I'll accept whatever I can. I want Ethan back fully. If not, I'd like to have his kids. Don't misunderstand. I wouldn't trap him. I just want children with him. I've thought about shared custody without marriage, making it work. It sounds odd. I know, but I love him and don't want kids with anyone else. I realize this might ruin future chances with other men, but I only want Ethan. That's it for now. I probably won't post until something big happens, but I'd love your opinions on my situation. Do you think dating Ethan like this is crazy? Should I move on and find someone else for a family? P.S. Caleb was never a real option. It was just a bad decision with him and I'll never repeat it. Thank you.